Hey, happy Tuesday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer, back once again as your host here at The Daily Dope, presented by thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard. Tonight is the final night of April. It's April 30th, 2019. This is episode 293 of The Daily Dope. So getting closer and closer to episode 300. Wow. So this is a live stream, and if you are watching live on YouTube, then you should know that chat is available, and I see Rob Moffat's already here in chat saying howdy. Good to see you, Rob. So as something just popped in my eye. Great. What in the world was that? Yowza. Oh, there we go. It's like, okay, don't tell me I'm going to have to pop off screen and take my contact out. No, I'm okay now. Anyway, as I mentioned, chat is available on YouTube. It is not on screen. That's one of the ways that I keep some of the stranger commenters at bay. But I do pay attention to the chat. So if you want to say howdy, or maybe you have a question, or there's something about tiny towns, which I am going to show you how to play tonight and review. Maybe there's something about tiny towns you'd like to get a better look at. Feel free to ask. I will respond. I'm not going to say your wish is my command, but I will do my best. So, there we have it. If you like the video, please give it a quick thumbs up. If you check out some of the videos on the Gaming Gang channel and you like them, by all means, please subscribe. Don't forget, ring that little bell, because it will not only notify you when there's a new video up, it will also tell you when the stream goes live within about 5 minutes or so. Be sure to visit thegaminggang.com. That's the home website. And of course, help spread the word. Tell a friend. I am rapidly approaching 4,000 followers on Twitter, which, it's neither really here or there. Well, 4,000 is going to be pretty good. I'm about 50 away. But still kind of hanging around 1,400 subscribers, 1,300 and some subscribers. So help spread the word, because I will have some giveaways if we start approaching some milestone numbers. So Rob is, I need safety goggles down here. Yeah, how about it? There's always something floating around here in the Duct Tape Studios. Paul Nolan's popping in. Good evening to you too, Paul. So, as I mentioned, I am going to be reviewing Tiny Towns and sharing how to play, too. It's very, very simple to learn. But I do have a bunch of news tonight. So, do want to point out, for those of you out there who dislike the tabletop gaming news when I include it, please take a look in the show notes below. You can skip right on past. But this summer, Ravensburger is going to be releasing a classic Universal horror film themed game, and I've got the dope on horrified. The stakes have been raised. Nah, no pun intended, I guess. Imagine living in a place so wretched that it's not plagued by 1, 2, or even 3 monsters, but 7 of the most horrifying fiends. In this game, you'll come face to face with them all as you work together to rid the town of the maniacal or misunderstood creatures before it's too late. Horrified includes high-quality sculpted miniatures of Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein, otherwise known simply as the Bride, the Wolfman, Dracula, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, and the creature from the Black Lagoon. So is the miniature for the Invisible Man just a base with a couple of footprints in it? I'm sure it's him wrapped in the bandages with the goggles. Anyway, it's innovative, easy to learn, cooperative gameplay, has players working together against the monsters with varying levels of difficulty. Just as each monster is unique, they require different strategies and tactics to be defeated. Horrified is for 1 to 5 players ages 10 and up. There's no playtime information available. I am taking a guess. We're probably looking at somewhere between, let's say, 45 minutes and an hour. The expected release date is August 1st, and the game will carry an MSRP of $39. I should say, take that back, $34.99. Interesting. I like the fact that it's the Universal Monsters, even though that whole Universal Monster universe is kind of, nobody knows what's going on with it. Although supposedly Invisible Man, or is it the Invisible Woman? Anyway, there's an Invisible movie coming that I guess is going to try to reboot that whole Universal Monsters universe again. So Paul Nolan says that they found an interesting Traveler card game that's out now with a couple of decks. I could have swore I recall a couple of years ago there was a Traveler card game. It wasn't a trading card game or collectible card game, but it was a card game that was kickstarted, and then I did not hear anything about that since. So, Paul, you probably know way more about that Traveler card game than I do. All right, moving along. Valley of the Kings deck building game is receiving a premium edition from AEG this fall, and I've got the dope. Take on the role of Egyptian nobles at the time of the pharaohs, preparing for death and burial in the Valley of the Kings. Players want to fill their tombs with food, canopic jars, statues, amulets, and other treasures. To do so, they acquire cards that are laid out in the shape of a pyramid. Purchase cards at the base of the pyramid, and it crumbles to bring cards higher in the pyramid to the base, where they can be bought. The pyramid resets each round with new offerings. You score only for cards that you remove from your deck and stash in your tomb. So if you keep using valuable cards for their effects and don't entomb them before the game ends, you could lose out on big points. Whoever collects the most valuable artifacts in their tomb wins. Valley of the Kings Premium Edition includes all the cards from the 3 previously released games, Valley of the Kings, Afterlife, and Last Rites, in addition to the components needed to play with a 5th and 6th player. It also includes rules for solo play and dividers for all the cards, and the components are upgraded to 300 plus, so more than 300, tarot-sized cards. Nice. Valley of the Kings Premium Edition is for 1 to 6 players, ages 14 and up, plays in 45 minutes to an hour, and will carry an MSRP of $49.95 when it arrives on October 4th. I have to point out, I am a fan of Valley of the Kings. Yes, Tom Cleaver's game. I've had this original edition for quite a while since it came out, and it is another one of those games that has to usually sit in my car because my nephew Cameron really digs it. So, pretty cool. Pretty cool. So Paul says they're calling that Traveler game a CCG, but no boosters. Well, they better not be calling it a CCG, because then they'll get sued by Wizards of the Coast. Because Wizards of the Coast has the trademark on collectible card games. It's got to be called a trading card game. See, I can call it a collectible card game if I want. So, little dry down here. Wow. What else is new, right? It's always dry down here. There's always something floating around. It's always dry down here. It's chilly today. It has been raining and cold all day long, all yesterday too. Blah. So let's get on with some more news, because earlier today, Dan Verssen Games launched a Kickstarter to bring a tactical post-apocalyptic game to the public, and I've got the dope on for what remains. On September 19th, 1957, a nuclear weapon was detonated 275 meters below ground at the Nevada test site in the United States. This test opened a gateway to the Netherscape, an alternate dimension more commonly referred to as the basement. Okay. Or the Duct Tape Studios. In 2013, North Korea made contact and formed an alliance with a powerful cabal of Nethermancers who ruled over large swaths of the basement. Nations across the world came together to battle the threat and resorted to using nuclear weapons to defeat the otherworldly creatures. While almost all the gates to the basement were closed, most of Earth and mankind was destroyed. The year is 2035. The remnants of humanity fight among themselves, struggling to emerge as the victors in a desperate fight for survival. For What Remains is a skirmish level war game set in a post apocalyptic near future. For What Remains is a two-player competitive game, or it can be played solitaire. And there are also two ways to play For What Remains: skirmishes and campaigns. Skirmishes are standalone games played for a single victory with no lasting repercussions. Campaigns are a series of skirmishes linked together to form a longer narrative. There is a video that was released earlier today by Dan Verssen Games. It runs almost 3 minutes. It's going to show you quite a bit about the campaign itself. So let's kick back and take a look.
DVG's next game is For What Remains, a skirmish-level war game set in a post-apocalyptic near future. The game is designed for two-player competitive or solitaire play. There are two ways to play For What Remains: skirmishes and campaigns. Skirmishes are standalone games played for a single victory with no lasting repercussions. Campaigns are a series of skirmishes linked together to form a longer narrative. For What Remains is a scenario-driven game. Each scenario typically has multiple objectives, and combat between factions is usually secondary. Players win skirmishes by gaining victory points through accomplishing these objectives. The game board in For What Remains is built from modular tiles which are themed to represent different environments. The default game board is a destroyed urban setting. Players build the game board with 9 modular tiles, each of which are divided into a 7x7 grid. Each character in For What Remains is represented by a counter and has a corresponding character card and action tokens. During campaign play, characters improve their attributes and develop new abilities as they progress from recruit to veteran and then elite level. A chit pull system is used for unit activation, and a step loss system is used for tracking injuries during skirmishes. Players control characters from one of the game's 6 factions. The Combine and Freeman Coalition are part of the core game. The other 4 factions can be integrated seamlessly. For What Remains has been designed specifically to support solitaire play. We have developed an AI system customized for each character in the game, so that your actions take advantage of each character's traits while also pursuing unique scenario objectives. The first setting for What Remains is Legacy of Semipalatinsk. Semipalatinsk was the former Soviet Union's premier nuclear test site. During the course of the campaign, you'll scavenge for precious resources and battle across a variety of environments such as abandoned cities, old rail yards, nuclear sites, and subterranean. The game is perfect for novice and veteran wargamers alike. It provides dynamic, skirmish-level combat in an exciting, unique post-apocalyptic setting. It features a step-loss system that supports both campaign play and injuries during combat. It also has an innovative chit pull system that keeps the action moving while also providing for command, control, and fog of war. We would love For What Remains to join the DVG catalog, but we need your help to make that happen.
As I previously mentioned, For What Remains is for 1 or 2 players, ages 14 and up, plays in around 30 to 45 minutes per scenario, and you can reserve the core game for a $55 pledge, or the core game and all 4 planned expansions for a $200 pledge through May 22nd. Project has already passed the 45% funding level in its first hours. It launched about 5 hours ago, a little more than 5 hours ago. And expected delivery on the core game is actually November of this year, so that's pretty sweet. Do want to also mention that the designer is, I want to say it's David Thompson, who has designed a few different things, including War Chest for AEG, which is very unlike this game. I can tell you that for sure. But the designer of this has got quite a eclectic CV, I guess we'll say, as far as game design. So Rob Moffat says chit pull, step loss, wargame lingo. Rob just loves the wargame lingo. Well, DVG is mainly a wargame company. So I will actually have a little bit more about Dan Verssen Games in just a little bit. But on to the next news piece, because the latest bundle of holding has arrived to save you big money, and I've got the dope. Adventurer! This neoclassical geek revival bundle represents the tabletop fantasy role-playing game Neoclassical Geek Revival by Canadian designer Zarkov Kowalski. Hopefully I'm kind of close on that. A tribute to and complete overhaul of the old school revival, NGR uses inventive modern rules to conjure the spirit of classic dungeon crawls, and Zarkov's many wild and weird dual-statted scenarios work with both NGR and more straightforward D&D retro clones. I don't know, are they allowed to say that? Hey, bundle of holding, are you allowed to say that? Aren't you supposed to say open game license retro clone? I'm just kidding. For just $5.95, you get all 6 titles in the Starter Collection, which has a retail value of $38, as DRM-free PDF ebooks, including the complete Neoclassical Geek Revival rulebook in 3 separate versions, illustrated by Dyson Logos, Alex Mayo, and Scrap Princess. Yeah, I don't like Scrap Princess's artwork. No offense to Scrap, but I'm not a fan of the art. The first level adventure, The Temple of Lies, the handy play aids, Hark! A Wizard! And Rampaging Monsters, and 2 remarkable scenarios from the November 2015 Old School Revival 3 offer, the Gem Prison of Zardax and the Gnomes of Levnik. And if you pay more than the threshold price of $16.24, you'll level up and get the entire bonus collection, with 5 more supplements and scenarios worth an additional $51, including City of Tears, a desert-themed dungeon and campaign setting, Under the Waterless Sea, the siege of an undersea city burned to the ground, rather to the ocean floor, and the holiday adventure Down in Yon Forest, plus the play aids Lost in the Wilderness, which are wilderness encounters, and The Price of Evil, using a deck of cards to generate a haunted house. Keep in mind, 10% of your payment after payment gateway fees will be donated to this offer's designated charity, the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Sweet! So, I have to point out, the name of the game is Neoclassical Geek Revival. A lot of people out there think it is Neoclassical Greek Revival, and it is not that. I will point out, I am familiar with the core book for this game, and if you are into old school Renaissance style role-playing games, this is a pretty cool core book. Even if you decide you're not going to utilize the specific system that's in this, because this is not just a like revamp of White Box or First Edition or anything like that. It is its own thing. So it is actually pretty interesting. And there is a lot of stuff, even if you don't plan on using the core mechanics, there's a lot of stuff for you to cannibalize out of this. There is also an adventure which is not part of this bundle. And I can kind of understand why, because of the title to it. The title is 1,000 Dead Babies. Yeah, that's kind of creepy, right? That makes you think, oh, what is that? Lamentation of the Flame Princess? No. But it is actually a very, very interesting adventure. And it is another low-level adventure. And it does not actually involve 1,000 dead babies. But it is actually very good. I've heard good things about the Temple of Lies as well, as far as the adventure. So, what was it? $5.95, you can get the core book. You can get the whole thing for $16.24, keeping in mind, that even if you got the PDF of the rules over at Drive Thru RPG, you'd be looking at, I want to say, $10.50 just for the rules. So, pretty sweet. Check this out. This is, like I said, this is a very interesting. It's not the typical just retro clone that's just, oh yeah, we're just gonna, clean up the language and make things a little clearer for gamers and just, do the same old, same old. No, this is something very unique. All right, my final news piece is about the latest adventure book that's from Art Dream Publishing. It's for Delta Green. It's now available in PDF, and I've got the dope. The Deadly Lights of Revelation, born of the U.S. government's 1928 raid on the degenerate coastal town of Innsmouth, Massachusetts. The covert agency known as Delta Green opposes the forces of darkness with honor, but without glory. Delta Green agents fight to save humanity from unnatural horrors, often at a shattering personal cost. The team behind the 8-time Emmy Award-winning Delta Green, the role-playing game, presents a collection of original adventures to introduce players to Delta Green. These operations will lead future agents to new heights of cosmic terror. This is Delta Green Control Group. Control Group includes Black Sat, which follows a team of NASA astronauts and a pair of strange civilians into space in 2010. A simple satellite repair leads them to truths of mathematics and physics beyond all human wonder and fear. Night Visions tracks U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan in 2011. A diplomatic patrol takes them to Gath Valley, a corner of the country that everyone tries to ignore, a place of deep shadows and ancient hungers. Sick Again sees a team from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention rushing to rural Arizona in 2012, investigating a strange viral outbreak which may expose them to threats beyond time itself. Then there's Wormwood Arena, which brings together survivors of the prior adventures, if there are any, as agents of Delta Green. A harmless-seeming Kansas cult's new pamphlet sports a sigil of unnatural portent. The agents must investigate the cult, perhaps even infiltrate it, and stop a catastrophic incursion before it begins. Delta Green Control Group is written by Greg Stoltz and Shane Ivey and illustrated by Dennis Detwiller. Control Group is playable with Delta Green, the role-playing game, an award-winning update to one of the most acclaimed RPG series of all time. The adventure book clocks in at 180 pages. It is available right now in PDF from Drive Thru RPG for $19.99. And, as I always like to point out, if you are going to visit any of the One Bookshelf websites, such as Drive Thru RPG or Wargame Vault, please stop by thegaminggang.com first, click on one of our banners. The Drive Thru RPG banners tend to be up on top. The Wargame Vault is down on the bottom of the page. But if you click on one of those banners, when you go there to the site, if you do happen to make a purchase, I get a small piece of that. Very small, but they all add up. So, and it actually, most months, all those nickels, dimes, quarters all add up and actually pay for the hosting for the Gaming Gang website. As I say time and time again, I don't have cheapo GoDaddy hosting because you can't have 100,000 unique visitors every month on cheapo hosting. And I'm not saying 100,000 visitors. I'm saying 100,000 unique visitors, some of who pop by every day. So that is it for today's news. Good chunk of news. We got almost a half hour of news in there, so that was sweet. I am going to jump into my how to play of Tiny Towns and my review in just a few moments. Did want to point out what's coming up on this week's shows as well as into next. So when I was talking about For What Remains from Dan Verssen Games, I said I'll have a little bit of info about DVG in just a few minutes. I am supposed to be receiving a box of Warfighter Warfighter releases from Dan Verssen Games. It is scheduled to arrive here tomorrow. Now, does that mean that the U.S. Post Office gets it here? No. But if it does show up in time, I am actually going to be unboxing Warfighter and whatever extra expansions, things like that are being sent on tomorrow's show. If for some reason it does not arrive in time, I am going to unbox and take a first look at Time of Crisis, the Roman Empire in Turmoil from GMT Games, as well as the Age of Iron and Rust expansion. So I've got my Wargame Wednesday covered. It's just not sure what we're going to take a look at. The reason why I mentioned that I want to do the Warfighter is that DVG, they're very kind. Their PR rep was very kind when I reached out and said, hey, you know, I haven't reviewed stuff for Dan Verssen Games in a long time, but back in the day when I lived in Arizona, I was reviewing like everything that was coming out, and they were like, oh yeah, oh gosh, yeah, we'll get you back on board. So want to get something else out there, right? Because it's usually Wargame Wednesday is normally ends up being either GMT, or it's Flying Pig Games, or it's Tiny Battle Publishing. It's one of those three, and I'd like to kind of mix the pots, you know, stir things up a little bit, get some new companies in as well, and continue covering GMT and Tiny Battle and Flying Pig, right? So that's on Wargame Wednesday. On Thursday, I will be reviewing the Dungeons & Dragons Stranger Things starter set from Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast, and Netflix. Yeah. I'll be reviewing this. Yeah. If you have not seen me do a negative review of something on the show, and I really do try to stay away from negative reviews. I'd rather not say anything. I can't stay quiet about this. So this will be on Thursday's show. Hopefully afterwards, the fine PR folks that I deal with that handle Wizards of the Coast will still like me. Because to be honest, this really, to me, this is not a Wizards of the Coast release. This is a Hasbro release. And we will talk about that during the review. Then on Friday's show, I will be doing a how to play and reviewing Forum Trajanum from Stronghold Games. Monday's show, we're trying to do some miniature stuff on Mondays. So yesterday I did my review of Wildlands, which I enjoyed, from Osprey Games. On next Monday's show, I will be reviewing Fallout Wasteland Warfare from Modifius Entertainment. So that will be on next Monday's show. Tuesday's kind of up in the air. I'm really trying to get the Traveler Ascension Imperial Warrant to the table a little bit. I played it once, and I got to be honest, I am not ready to do any sort of review for playing it once. So Rob Moffat says negative review. Uh-oh. They happen. They do happen. I try not to, some people get a real kick out of giving negative reviews. I don't, because I understand for the most part, usually somebody did work hard on a game. Normally, sometimes it's obvious that it's just a cash grab. Yeah, I'm looking at you. So in a situation like that, I tend to be much more likely to go public with my review. A lot of times people don't realize that if I'm not covering a game that a lot of people are covering and the reviews are kind of meh, I have probably checked it out and just taken a pass on doing the review. That's why sometimes you'll see me do an unboxing and then you don't see me follow up with a review. And a lot of times it's because I'm going to give the game a meh kind of review score. And I let the publisher know. I let the publisher know in advance and say, hey, do you still want me to do the review? And sometimes they're like, yeah. Yeah. It, companies used to be more apt to tell you go ahead with a negative review. These days, not so much. Back 5 years ago, even 4 years ago, it was like, well, yeah, sure, at least you're getting coverage out there about the game, right? We understand our game's not going to be for everyone. These days, with so much competition, and I will actually mention that while I'm doing my how to play and review of Tiny Towns, you can't get a lot of negative word out there, otherwise you're just going to disappear. You are not going to have a shot. Even really good games are having a hard time hitting like evergreen status in the gaming community because there's just such a glut of games out there right now. And like I said, I'm going to actually mention that while we're taking a look at Tiny Towns. All right, so as I like to point out, the Gaming Gang and thus the Daily Dope are both not-for-profit endeavors. So if you like the website, if you like the show, if you like the channel, please consider making a small donation to Lil Bub's Big Fund at the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Lil Bub's Big Fund does provide grant monies to organizations around the United States who care for special needs animals as they await adoption and hopefully find their forever homes. These animals could just be a little older. They could be deaf. They could be blind. They could require medications. Maybe they have mobility issues. But still, these pets do deserve to find loving homes, and I guarantee you that they will pay you back for the love you give them tenfold. So, always like to point that out. I am a big proponent of taking care of animals. I am not a PETA guy by any stretch of the imagination. No, not at all. I think PETA is a lot of hypocrites. But I am certainly very soft-hearted when it comes to animals. So, anyway, so Rob says, yeah, once the bad word is out there, it's not good. No, not these days. Back in the day, it used to be, well, we understand, come on, reviews are opinions, right? I play a game, I'm not into a certain sort of genre, and some other person's really big into it. Our reviews are going to be different. It's just opinions. I can't believe how many people just take reviews as if they're gospel. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. So, although it'll be gospel on this, all right. All right, so I know folks are tuning in because they want to learn how to play and see my review of Tiny Towns, which I keep wanting to say like Tiny Towns, kind of like Mighty Mouse. Tiny Towns is from Alderac Entertainment Group, or as I like to refer to them, AEG. It's designed by first-time designer Peter McPherson, with artwork and graphic design provided by Gong Studios and Matt Paquette. The game is for 1 to 6 players, ages 14 and up, plays in about 45 minutes to an hour. A little less than that, to be honest with you. It does carry an MSRP of $39.99. Here's the weird thing. Tiny Towns, I believe, is available in some places and not available in others. So I do believe what's going on right now is Tiny Towns is available at brick and mortar stores, and it will arrive at online retailers sometime in May. That's what I think. I am not positive, but I have seen that many of the online retailers are showing that this is still a pre-order, but I thought this is out in stores. Regardless, it's out here on the table. so here we go. So this is Tiny Towns. The premise of Tiny Towns is that you are going to build a town on your 4x4 grid. There are resources that come into play. There are resources that you need to build the various different buildings, which are represented by these wooden tokens here. Each game can be pretty different. Tiny Town, is that where Tiny Battles Publishing is located? I believe it's out in the suburbs of Tiny Towns. It's small suburb. I don't know. So anyway, this game is super easy to teach. The rule book is very nicely well laid out. Plenty of examples of play. There are a lot of different little optional rules that you can utilize in the game as well, which I thought was kind of interesting. So we've got town hall rules. We've got a solo variant talking about each of the different buildings. Kind of monuments as well. Monuments are special buildings that each player will have the ability to build one special monument that only they can build. So very, very easy to get through. It says ages 14 and up. I'm telling you right now, the reason why it's ages 14 and up are because of the cubes and the building tokens here. That's why it's 14 and up. I can easily see you teaching a 10-year-old this game, maybe even younger than that. So you're going to have different buildings, and if we notice, I'm going to actually put my reading specs on here. If you notice, each of these building cards are going to show a little icon. That little icon represents what token is used to represent that. And we've got bags of these different buildings here. I just pulled a couple of each out just to kind of give you an example, and we're going to talk about those. So each of them will show an icon of the token that represents that building or that structure, that construct. A little bit of artwork. We also see a grid. So we're going to see different resources here and a specific shape that those resources take. That is how you're going to have to lay your resources out on your grid in order to build that building. So buildings that give you benefits or bigger victory point payouts do tend to have more resources, different resources, as well as a little bit of different shapes for you to have to put together. So the buildings I've got laid out here are actually recommended for your first game or to learn the game. We actually have quite a few different buildings here. I believe I left them in... No, I didn't leave them in the box. Where did I put them? Where did... I actually am going to move this box out of the way. Here we go. Okay, so you're going to see that the buildings are going to be 4 buildings of each type. So these buildings are all kind of farm related. These buildings are all kind of factory related with the dark, almost like a black background. These are all kind of tavern related. So we've got a tavern here. There's like an ale house. There's an almshouse. I should say almshouse, not ale house. There's an inn. There's a feast hall. So, and you'll notice that these buildings all will have different requirements of how to build them and what kind of benefit or victory point total that they give you. So once you've learned how to play the game, what you're supposed to do is you're actually supposed to take each of the groups of 4 cards and randomly select one. Now, the way the starting game is laid out, some of these buildings have a little more synergy with each other than they would if you were just going to take them at random. Like these are kind of church or religion related. These here are all kind of business related. So we've got a tailor, a market, a bakery, and then we have a theater is what we're using here in the base game. Then we got different kind of like wells. So we got like a shed, a millstone, fountain, and here we've got the well. So once you've learned how to play the game, you're actually going to randomly seed your available buildings by choosing one of each of the 4 available buildings of each type. Then each player also will get a monument card. They get 2 monument cards, actually. So every player gets 2 monument cards, and you're going to choose one that you will have available to you to build. So the monuments tend to give you some really cool stuff. They tend to give you higher victory point totals They tend to maybe give you bonuses during play. And they're all different. The Star Loom, Statue of the Bond Maker, Bond, James Bond, Grove University, Silva Forum, Cathedral of Katrina. So the little towns you're making are supposed to be for like these little anthropomorphic animals. So you'll see some of the artwork will feature some animals. Like here we've got these little frog guys. They're not the focus of the artwork. Like here we've got like little mice. So this is not along the lines of, say, Everdell, where you had all the different characters as well as building different locations. This is just you're building the town. So, just for the heck of it, let's take 2 of these. So we got Statue of the Bond Maker, and we've got Grove University. I think we'll take Grove University, and then you kind of hide this. So each of the players will hide the available monument that they can make. So they know what they can make, the other players do not. Simply enough, what you're going to do is you're going to play the game where, for an example, this shows who's the master builder, so who's like the active player. It's kind of cool. It's kind of this big like hammer token here. I gotta be honest though, I mean we didn't really use it that much. It was pretty simple just to know who was up. So what you do is, let's say for an example you're playing like 3-4 players. Like I said, you can play as many as 6. Interestingly enough, and I don't know if this was a mistake, but I actually got 7 grids. I have 7 grids in my box, so I have not looked to see as far as all of these resources here, but I'm almost curious. I could maybe play 7 players because I have 7 grids. So what you'll do is each player, your turn's going to start off and somebody's going to call out a resource. So we have glass, we have wheat, we have wood, we have stone, and we have brick. Now, everyone can build from these available buildings here. So everyone is looking to put together these buildings and have the various different patterns filled with the different resources. So as an example, and of course, I have the ability to build Grove University, which I'm hiding from everybody else, but I will actually leave that out like so. So the first player would call out one of the resources. So let's say, for an example, somebody says stone. First player says stone. Bingo! So everybody's going to take a stone resource and they're going to place it somewhere on their grid. Once you've placed a resource on your grid, you cannot move that resource or remove that resource until you actually build something with it. So let's say, for an example, first player said stone, then everybody's put their resource down, then next player says, okay, wood. Well, we know we can build the well here by simply having wood and stone next to each other. Now, you don't have to have it in a straight line like this. You can have it like this. You can have it like this. So as long as these resources meet up like so, you could build the well. Same with the theater. You could have it like this. You could have it like this. Like this. So however you end up lining these up so they all meet together like this, then you're in good shape. So as an example, let's say somebody said, okay, wood. Well, if you wanted to, you could do that and then say, okay, well, I'm going to build from my resources here. I'm going to build a well. And it gives you a victory point for each adjacent cottage. So I could say, well, I'm going to build a well. Or Remember, I had my stone here. I could say, well, I know that the theater has stone here, wood, and then glass, so maybe I'll do that. And try to get the theater, which gives me a victory point for each other unique building type in the same row or column that the theater happens to be in. And you'll progress through this. Everyone's going to call out different resources, and normally it's going to be a resource that they want. So if you see it looks like, oh, somebody's trying to build a factory here. I see the factory requires 2 brick. I'm not building anything with bricks. So when it's my turn, I'm not going to call out brick. I'm going to call out something that I want to use. As far as a solitaire way of playing, or you can also do this if you want to make things fairly random, is you can actually use this deck of cards. So you can use this deck of cards to randomly determine what resource is actually used that turn. So you could flip that over, say glass. Okay, so for this turn we've got glass. Where can I put the glass? Well, building that theater is looking better and better, right? Okay, so if I'm playing solitaire, flip the next one, stone. Where could I put some stone? Yeah, maybe I'll put some stone up here. To make the game easier when people are learning, you can agree on a variant where you can keep 2 resources off board. You can keep 2 sources off board, and that allows you the ability to not get stuck having resources on your grid that you're not going to use. Because when a resource is called, you have to take it. You have to use it. You have to put it on your grid someplace. So it can turn into, like, remember, I was talking about, well, I'm not building a factory. Well, the person building a factory, when it's their turn, they can say, hey, brick. And I'd be like, oh, great. Now what? Now what am I going to do? Where am I going to put this? I'm not building anything that's got brick. Still got to take it. Still got to place it. So that is actually part of the timing mechanism of the game as well. So as an example, let's say we're playing along and it's a multiplayer game, and then we're moving along and somebody says, okay, wood. I would take a wood, I would place it down here. If you notice, now I could actually build that theater, which is this token here. Matches up with that. So what I would do is I can build this theater in any of these 4 squares on the grid that resources were found at. So the theater gives you 1 victory point for each other unique building type in the same row and column as the theater. So what I would probably look to do is put it here, somewhere in here, because then that way I get a little more of the options available to me as far as how I can score unique buildings this way and that way. So I would have a theater now. So it's important for you to take a look to see what each of these buildings end up doing. If you build the theater, the Avengers movie watchers will come. That's right. And you can get part of that $1.2 billion opening weekend gross. I saw it. I saw it on Friday, so I saw it Friday afternoon. No spoilers. I'm not giving out any spoilers. So for an example here, the cottage gives you 3 victory points, so that's good. If this building is fed. Now, to be able to feed a building means you have to have farms. So if you don't have a farm that's feeding this cottage, this will be worth 0 victory points. So we see we've got a chapel. So the chapel says 1 victory point for each fed cottage. So now, if we had a chapel and cottage, now we'd be looking at, well, each cottage is suddenly worth 4 victory points. Then we've got the farm, and the farm says it feeds 4 buildings anywhere in your town. So if you have a farm 4 of your cottages will be considered fed. We've got the tavern, which the tavern's kind of funny because it's like, what is this, Chicago? It's like, the more taverns you have, the more points you score. So if you have 1 tavern, you get 2 victory points. If you have 5 taverns, you get 20 victory points. It's like Chicago, where if you go into the neighborhoods of Chicago, like where I grew up, like on the northwest side, you'd go into the neighborhood and you'd have like a bar on every block. You'd have a butcher shop just about every block, every other block. You'd have a bakery every couple of blocks. So that's why I was kind of laughing. It's like, oh, wow, more taverns you have, the more victory points you get. Then, for an example, we've got the well. A well gives you 1 victory point for each adjacent cottage. The theater we already talked about gives you a victory point for each unique building. And every building is unique. It basically, what they're saying would be, say we had something like this. And normally you would probably be standing up your little buildings. I'm just laying them down so they're easier to see. But in a situation like this, it's 2 cottages, so it would only count as 1 victory point because it's only 1 unique type of building located there. And then we've got the factory, which is the toughest building to build in this early setup. And when constructed, place 1 of the 5 resources on the factory. So you would actually do something like this. Or if you wanted to let them down, something like this. And then every time somebody calls out this resource, you can actually place a different resource of your choice. So what's going to happen is you're going to continue along building up your various different buildings based on the resources that are coming out. Just throw some stuff out here like these. As I pointed out, remember, when you're putting the resources out, the resources are going to stay where you place them unless you build something with that resource. So there are times where you are basically going to be looking at a board that looks like this, a town that looks like this. So you've got buildings, you've got structures that you've built, but you also have resources that you were unable to string together to build buildings. These squares here are worth -1 victory point. So if you did not build a structure on one of the squares, it's worth -1 victory point. Plus, remember, if you had cottages, which the cottages are fairly easy to build. Let's actually fill this in a little better. I was gonna say that's like, you actually be a pretty bad player if your town looked like that at the end of the game. But also, the other thing to keep in mind too is that if you have cottages but you don't have a farm, or you don't have enough farms to feed all of your cottages, they score you 0 victory points. They don't count as a negative, but they do count as 0 victory points. Also, if you were able to build your monument, you would simply place your tower. It's like a tower token there. You would place your tower on the board as well. So this Grove University was 3 victory points. Immediately place a building on an empty square in your town. That's what the university would have given me as a bonus. So then what you do is you just bust out the score sheet and you just start going down the line with, okay, so who's got victory points for the factories? How many victory points for the cottages, for the churches, for the taverns, for the theater, for the well, for the monuments, and then what are the negatives for squares that you have not built anything on? I have to point out, this game is not an easy game. It looks pretty simple. I mean, it takes 5 minutes to learn how to play it, right? You're looking at, okay, you need to lay out your resources so that they match up like these to build these buildings. Every turn, somebody's going to call out a resource glass. Everybody take glass. Everybody place glass. And it just keeps going around the table. Now, eventually, what will happen is once a player gets to the point where they have all of their grid filled in, be it with buildings or be it with resources, they're out. That's it. They're done. The game does not end simply because someone else has filled up their grid. You continue to play until everyone is completely filled in, which sounds like, oh man, if I haven't been paying attention and laying down my resources right, I'm gonna be sitting there waiting forever for this game to be over so we can score. That's not really the case. I found while we were playing that even when we played with 5 players, I have not played this with 6, I have played it with 5. I found out with 5 players that it was maybe 5 to 10 minutes. It was between about 5 to 10 minutes before everybody was done. Because the game moves quickly enough. The game zips along. I mean, come on, really. You can have some players who will have some analysis paralysis, but not a lot. One of the aspects of the game that I really like too is that you can just play it kind of like as a quick move, and yeah, okay, and I'm not super concerned with making the puzzle aspect of this and making sure I've got all these different buildings and things. Just kind of, yeah, I'm having fun putting these little resources down and building stuff. Or you can approach it where it's like, wow, this really is a puzzle. I need to decide how do I want to utilize these different resources that I'm putting down and minimize my failure to build things as I put stuff down. So you can take the game as seriously or as lightly as you would like, and I definitely dig that too. Like I said, it takes about 5 minutes to teach this also. So then, of course, when you're finished and you've tallied up the score, whoever has the most victory points is the victor. I like the fact that we've got the different buildings. It's not always the same buildings. This is just the setup that's recommended when you first learn to play the game. I appreciate the fact that even though everybody's building from the same exact types of buildings here, that everyone does have an opportunity to build their own monument, which is going to have a special ability or special victory point bonuses that only they get. All right, so that is how you play Tiny Towns. What are my overall thoughts and review score? So, I like the components. I think the component quality is really nicely done. The boards are thick. I mean, they're a little plain. I would have maybe liked a little more pop, but they're fine. They're okay. We've got all the various different styles of building tokens. I thought that was cool. There's the master builder, like first player marker. I mean, it's fun. I mean, I think that's kind of funny. It's got this big hammer. Like I said, we didn't really use it. It's got the you got a bunch of score sheets, although they are only single-sided. But I gotta be honest, we didn't even use score sheets. We just had a pad of paper we jotted stuff down on. I tend to do that. I never actually use the score sheets that come with games. I just don't want to like waste them. I don't know. So rules are very easy to understand, comprehend. It takes 5 minutes tops to teach somebody to play the game. So all in all, I really like Tiny Towns, or as I was saying, Tiny Towns. It's one of the best games, honestly, I've played so far this year. It really, really is. I am not a big Euro gamer. I think people know that. People know that I'm not a big, kind of play a game in a vacuum where what I do doesn't have any effect on anybody. So I actually get a kick out of when you're calling out the resources, kind of trying to like screw over other people, because you watch what they've got on their grids, you get an idea what they're looking to build, so you can throw a wrench into their plans by making sure you don't call out the resources that they want. I also like the fact that we've got the random deck, so that's pretty cool too. You can utilize this also, not only as when you're playing solitaire, you can utilize it with any number of players. You may even consider using this when you have more players too. There is kind of a variant in the rule book as well that says every so many cards, it's like a wild that you can choose whatever you want. So that's kind of cool too. There's just a lot of gameplay built into Tiny Towns, and a lot of little variants and variations of how you can approach playing it. I really dig it. I also have to point out that my 76-year-old mom, who was in town over the weekend, played Tiny Towns, and she really liked it. So she's not a gamer, but really one of the only board games that I tend to play with her is Carcassonne, because she really likes Carcassonne. She really dug Tiny Towns. So I gotta be honest, this is gonna be, in my opinion, I think this is gonna be another little evergreen for AEG. Now remember, I had pointed out that there was some talk that, too many games out on the market and things like that. John Zinser very recently in an interview talked about how AEG is going to cut back on the number of game releases per year. So I found that pretty interesting. And John had pointed out that this is a great time to be a gamer. It really is. I mean, this is like a golden age for certain. Not so much for game publishers, because even if you're putting out a really good game, you're having a difficult time getting it noticed, because there is so much out there and there's something new constantly. So, I mean, I know people who are like stressed out because there's so many different games that they want to play, and they're afraid they're going to miss out on some awesome game, which to me is kind of silly. But all in all, I give Tiny Towns a very, very solid 9.6 out of 10. I think it's that good. I think it makes an excellent introductory gateway game to non-board gamers, to kind of show them, hey, when I talk about board games, I'm not talking Monopoly, Game of Life, Risk, things like that. I like all the various options for play as well. And I would take a guess, we'll probably see some expansion to Tiny Towns, with maybe like new cards, with new buildings that have new effects, and things like that. I don't think we're going to see like a huge, it's not going to be like Smash Up, where we're going to see Smash Up expansions all the time. But really, really dug it. I was I knew it was going to be pretty good, because I had been hearing about Tiny Towns all the way back at Gen Con last year from some of the folks over at AEG, kind of a little off the record, and that it was like their favorite game that they were playing that was coming out. So really, really like it. Really, really enjoyed it. And unfortunately, we're only probably going to see maybe 4 new games from AEG this year. And thankfully, Tiny Towns is one of them. So that is it for today's show. As I mentioned, on tomorrow's show, it's either going to be Warfighter unboxing and first looks, or unboxing Time of Crisis, the Roman Empire in Turmoil, as well as the Age of Iron and Rust expansion, which if we do Warfighter, I'll probably just shoot a standalone video for Time of Crisis and its expansion. So there you have it. As I like to point out, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, please be sure to go visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. By now you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Everybody who was hanging out in chat. So, Robert and who else was hanging around in here? Haven't seen. Oh, Paul Nolan. Paul Nolan stopped by. I'm not sure if Paul hung out for the whole show, but those of you who hung out in chat, thank you very much for keeping me company. Of course, everybody watching live and after the fact, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks again for watching The Daily Dope, presented by The Gaming Gang. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. And if you dig the channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to check out our previous episode, click right here. And if you want to check out a somewhat randomly selected episode, give a click right down here. It'll be like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You just don't know what you'll get. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'm Jeff McAleer.